So we're in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress. I'm here with Kevin Riley. He's the CTO of Sonus Networks. So Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We are at Mobile World Congress, but still here, like the cloud, that is just a massive topic for everybody, suppliers and service providers alike. So what's going on in terms of cloud innovation at Sonus at the moment?
At Sonus, we've already made the pivot from hardware into software, into VNFs over the last 3 years. We have kind of all of our products migrated over to pure software and virtualization.
Okay.
And now what we're really moving into the next phase with our customers and the CSPs, which is proving out and helping architect the cloud strategy, the cloud architecture, what that infrastructure looks like. I think like we've talked in the past, there's really no recipe to do this out of the box or best practices. So what we're seeing is, the CSPs collaborating with the vendors, whether it's in standards bodies, forums, or their own labs, things like ONF, Sonus, NIA for Etsy, all the vendors and communication service providers are coming together to try to figure out what is that recipe, how do you make this work?
Okay.
I think there are a lot of companies like Sonus that have already made the pivot from hardware to VNFs. There's a proven VNF ecosystem out there. I think the technology ingredients into the infrastructure exist and are proven by some of the early pioneers, customers who have already turned up things like SD-WAN or network on demand. They're proving that the ingredients are there. Now we just need to converge as an industry and figure out how to scale this and build out the telco cloud across the industry.
Okay. So, as the evolution of Sonus has gone along and you've been making that migration to software and getting more involved in what is generically known as the cloud, what have you learned as you've gone along, and what do you know now that, say, you didn't know 2 years ago that's helped to inform your strategy?
I think when we initially started this journey, words like cost savings came up first when they talked about why. Why would you want to do this, right? Cost, and then we've kind of moved into, well, we can automate and it will scale better, we can turn up services quicker, but we spent a lot of time talking about things we do today, just in a different form factor and a different architecture. What I'm seeing now is really a fundamental shift to looking at this migration to a cloud architecture or cloud strategy in terms of how do you build a platform for innovation as you move forward?
Right.
How do you unlock new capabilities? How do you basically build an infrastructure that unlocks an entirely new business opportunity or service structure? So we've kind of moved from all right, let's just do what we did the old way, a new way in software, to how to recreate new business opportunities on a platform that unlocks innovation.
Okay. So what are you seeing in terms of the service providers, in terms of what they are doing with these new capabilities to innovate either in operations or in new services and applications?
Well, I think if you take a step back first, in the past we had a world where there are lots of components in a network that kind of did their own things and operated almost as a bump in the wire along the way. And what the service providers are now, as part of their architecture, really mandating is that the various layers of the OSI model, all these platforms or elements along the way, open up, become programmable, orchestratable, and a lot of times we think of that as control and putting them together like Lego blocks. But it also means that these various network elements or these different planes in the stack have access to each other now. They're easily connected.
Right.
There's open APIs or platform APIs that now can be leveraged. So part of the innovation thesis is how do we now take our network functions and drive collaboration to add more value? Right?
Okay.
And I'd say, an example of that we're seeing just in our space, we're, as a session border controller company primarily, we sit in the session plane owning SIP signaling. We know a lot about real-time communications and the attributes associated with it before the bits start to flow. It's valuable information. In the past, I just held it on and held it to myself.
Right.
But now as this new architecture opens up and we can now orchestrate and interact with other planes, you can envision scenarios where it's very valuable for us to share that information with the security stack, with the security plane, and help them apply much finer grained policy as it would relate to security, admitting users, allowing flows on the network, interacting with that plane to decide should we allow a session to start or stop, making them aware of what's happening with finer granularity. Okay. Similarly, if you look down in the transport layer, the information we hold is of equal value down there to build out the network to realize the SLA. Right. To say,
okay.
We're about to start a video call between the board members. Very important call. Let's reserve the network resources, make sure it has the right policy associated with it, and that it's preserved at the expense of possibly some other things in the network. So The innovation I see, at least in my part of the world in the stack, is really, we have context as the real-time session layer that's of value to other pieces of the infrastructure. And in the past, I couldn't reach out and talk to them and collaborate with them and share that context and maybe get views into their context. Now I can as we move into this model, and I think that's one of the fundamental principles that's going to underpin this innovation that we unlock moving forward.
Okay. And for the service providers now, so you mentioned just before that initially it was kind of seen as an opportunity for cost efficiency. Do you see now with your service provider customers that maybe they're seeing the opportunity for cost efficiency, greater agility, and new business opportunity, all three put together?
Yes, I think over the long term they realize they will realize cost benefits.
Right.
But up front it may be equal or maybe a little more to get into it.
Right.
And maybe those first few services or applications you turn up will be low margin. But once you get the platform and the momentum and the business processes behind that, then you start to get bigger and bigger gains as you start to roll more services onto the platform. So I think all three are in play, but cost is not front and center initially. I think they realize on the longer tail, as they pile more and more onto the architecture, the cost benefits will start to rise up. But as you start, that can't be your singular focus. It has to be about service creation, agility, and innovation.
Okay. And what kind of opportunities do you see for the service providers in terms of rethinking their architecture in terms of the physical way that's been put together? There's a lot of talk now about central offices becoming distributed data centers, those being repurposed. Do you see a distributed cloud future for the communication service providers?
Yeah, I definitely, as I talk to CTOs at our customers, I'm seeing a strong lean towards disaggregation. You kind of have the mobile edge computing initiative that's come up now, which is a perfect example of that, where you want to push the compute to the edge. And I think it's really being driven by just the sheer scale of what service providers have to deal with. It's not just you and me and our complex services anymore. You now have, which is one of the major themes here at Mobile World Congress, the Internet of Things now starting to fold onto their networks. And they really need to be able to respond and scale at speeds that they probably never even dreamed of just 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to start to distribute and disaggregate. And I think they realize that. Right? And that as part of getting to this new network architecture, it's all about efficiency, scale, speed, response time, so that our experiences are preserved as our services become more and more complex, as more and more machines and humans are competing for that bandwidth. It's got to disaggregate. I don't see how you can continue to drive it from a centralized CO architecture.
Okay. Excellent. Kevin, thanks very much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Rick.